Welcome back. You're watching Markets at Noon on ET Now, and let's talk about Cipla. Healthy set of numbers coming in for that particular counter. If you look at the stock price today, holding on to gains. We're now joined by Umang Vohra, who's the MD and Global CEO of Cipla. Good afternoon, Mr. Vohra. Thank you for joining us on ET Now. And let's talk about your Q1 earnings. Healthy set of numbers coming in for your company. Could you especially talk about the India business, which was actually led by COVID and COVID-related drugs?
I think we've reported a very strong quarter. We've got revenues going up by 27%, EBITDA by 28%, and profit after tax by 24%. I think there's been a pretty strong performance across most of our markets, India included, and of course the tailwind of COVID. So I think COVID is selling drugs. So I think because of that, the numbers are what they are, and we're quite confident about how our earnings trajectory will pan out over the next couple of quarters.
Mr. Vohra, let's also talk about your India business ex-COVID rather. That also segment has done pretty well. What actually led to the recovery?
That is correct. I think there's a couple of factors. There was a base effect of the previous year because in the previous year almost everything was locked down. But if you look at the numbers, with total reported is 68%, minus the sold COVID drugs is 40%. And even if you normalize some of the other drugs that may have gone up for COVID, we have still delivered very, very strong numbers in India. And, I think we feel confident about the ability to grow the India market, at least our business in the India market going forward.
Right. So let's also, just talk about what's happening as far as, the US business is concerned. So if I look at the US business, $140 million, it's, looking indecent as far as the entire space is concerned. 3 quarters been largely on the flattish side. Can you just tell us, what does this essentially mean? And also, in terms of the non-COVID business in India, are things like completely back to normal?
They come back to relatively normal, as I would call it, in periods such as these, but then depending on the waves begin to react. So I think in normal periods, I believe the market should begin to show growths of upwards of 10%. And at Cipla, we'll try and beat that growth, beat the market growth by and large over the next couple of quarters.
Also, sir, about the US business, if you could just tell us, things are looking stagnant in 3 quarters over there with 140 million. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, and I think the thing with the US business is that it is most responsive to launches. We were about $100 million about 2 years back. We've reached $140 million per quarter now. And our next big launch momentum is coming in a few quarters from now, which is largely in the next year. We have launches this year as well. And they will probably move up the trajectory, but the big step function launches will happen in the year ahead. And I think price erosion, which is what most people talk about in the US, gets noticed most when there are no new launches. And so for us, as the launch momentum begins to accelerate, we will also begin to see growth in this part of the business.
Mr. Vohra, let's talk about your inhaler Albuterol. It's been a year since it's been launched. How is the progress on that particular front?
Yes, certainly. I think we're about 18% of the generic share in Albuterol, about over 15% of the total market. And Albuterol, the market has stayed steady. And it shows a marginal growth every year. So I think it's a market that is expanding slowly, and we feel confident about trying to push our share slightly higher of the total market, not so much just the Albuterol category that we sell in, but the overall market. And I think that is what our overall endeavor and game is.
Mr. Vohra, let's talk some more about COVID-19. What sort of a flip has COVID-19 given in terms of cost saving for your company?
So I don't think we have too much of cost-based saving on account of COVID, because realistically, the last year base on COVID was also significantly lower. But if you really look at it, I think even without COVID, even without the impact of the COVID drugs and the margins on that, we're still reporting margins which are broadly in line with the guidance we've given. So I think we feel confident about the margin profile of the company, and we are hoping to maintain that in the quarters going forward.
So, you of course have a lot of essential drugs as far as COVID-related treatment protocols are concerned. How are you preparing for the third wave? Definitely, second wave came in as a shock. But how should you prepare for the third wave so that if there is any issue, overnight supplies can be increased for a lot of these key essential products?
So I think post the second wave. So firstly, I hope we don't see a third wave like we have seen in the second wave, but I think most companies now, like ours, have reached a level of preparedness where I think we can scale up pretty significantly in terms of medicine supply. And of course, this depends on the nature of the wave. I think the type of medicines that may be required in the third wave could be quite different than the second wave. We also don't think that hospitalizations may be at the same level that we've seen in wave 2. So our product portfolio is available. And we are ready to scale it up. We're already running at a slightly higher inventory level than we used to, because it helps when the market needs the product.
All right, Mr. Vohra, we leave it at that. Thank you for joining us on the show, talking about what's aided Cipla's performance and the way going ahead for the company. That was Umang Vohra, who's the MD and Global CEO of Cipla.